Let's talk a bit about and look at some example reports. The first piece we read for today, discussing types of reports, does an excellent job introducing and situating a range of different report types. Perhaps my favorite resource offered in this reading is the table toward the end, where the authors describe typical occasions for writing reports. They identify the formality level of different reports and discuss the work that different types of reports need to do, which includes to entice, to inform, to recommend, to compare, to persuade, and to update. The table from the reading provides some important context about when and how this work can happen. I want to focus in on a couple of examples from this table. And I'll admit, some of the images appear pretty blurry in this short video, but I've posted the links to the reports themselves in the Lesson 6 area of our NYU classes site, so you can go back and check out the reports in their entirety. Let's first take a look at project plans. Project plans conceptualize, organize, and provide initial details about planning a project. Usually there are two audiences: the project participants and supervisors. Participants work on the project, while supervisors might approve the project, allocate project budget, and more. Project plans typically include an overview, a description of the project, a list of deliverables, a schedule for the project, a budget, a list of personnel and responsibilities, and often an evaluation approach, which will help to assess whether or not the project was successful upon its completion. The visual content of project plans can include Gantt charts or other visuals that help illustrate a timeline, and tables, for instance, presenting budget information. Gantt charts can be incredibly complex and created using specialty software designed to create complex, robust project calendars, like the one that we'll see on the screen right now. Or they can be relatively simple and created in Word or Excel. But the goal of these sorts of visuals is to map a project across days, weeks, and months, and to identify key project moments and deliverables. Here's a project plan I recently submitted to an organization on my campus, Michigan State University. I created it and submitted it as the director of a lab called the Creativity Exploratory, which is a brainstorming, innovation, and entrepreneurship lab in our College of Arts and Letters. And you can see I structured the report as a memo, and the first graphic is the logo of the lab. The second set of graphics are 3 photos representing the work we do in the lab. On the second page, I've included a table that describes the proposed project calendar and then included information about personnel and budget. This report is doing 2 key things. First, it's proposing a project, and then second, it's serving as a project plan report. It's providing an initial project plan. Next, let's look at recommendation reports. And you can see in the table offered in the first of today's readings that recommendation reports can happen at a range of different moments across a project or across different projects. Recommendation reports offer recommendations for actions to pursue or activities to engage, and often discuss implications and consequences of different actions. The primary audience for a recommendation report is the decision makers who can take action. Recommendation reports usually include an overview, an introduction of the problem or issue, some sort of discussion of the criteria or methods used to research the recommendations, and of course the recommendations themselves. Sometimes the recommendations are presented in a comparative way. We could do this, or we could do this. These are the pros of doing this. These are the cons of doing this. Other times the recommendations are presented in order of priority. First, we should consider doing this. Second, we should consider doing this. The visual content of recommendation reports varies widely depending on the problem or issue at hand and the recommendations being posed. An example recommendation report that I found that I thought was really interesting is a Broadway streetscape master plan. Early on, the document provides a map that identifies the key geographical area under discussion and some of the landmarks in that area. In the later portions of the report, much more detailed maps are included that highlight existing elements and opportunity spaces. And then the report, most importantly, offers a set of recommendations, and they get really specific, including recommendations about the types of vegetation that should be planted along the street, along with recommendations about the color palette and typography used for signage along the street. Next, let's take a look at research reports. Research reports deliver information about a research-based issue or project. The audience of research reports varies widely. For instance, as a faculty member at Michigan State, I engage in research, I write up the findings of my research, and I send it off to hopefully be published in trade magazines and publications in my field. Other audiences of research reports might be a funding agency. If I coordinate a lab, for instance, that receives $1 million grant from a federal agency, I'm going to be expected to report on my research to that agency. If I run an advocacy organization and have data based on needs in my community that my organization has researched and discovered, I might prepare a research report to send to local politicians. Research reports typically include an executive summary or overview, an introduction that provides situating material about the research being reported on, a methods section that describes the research methodology and specific methods, a results section that provides the research data, a discussion and implications section that analyzes the data and presents trends or findings, and a conclusion that suggests next steps. Research reports can include tables, graphs, charts, and diagrams presenting data. They might include maps. If appropriate, they might include photographs. So let's look at an example research report. This is the Michigan Surgeon General's Health Status Report for the state of Michigan 2010. One of the graphics included in this research report is a bar chart documenting the top 10 leading causes of death in Michigan in 2001. Pie charts appear on the next page, breaking down those numbers by gender and race. And there are many other graphics included in this report on research. Although there are lots of other types of reports discussed in the first reading for Lesson 6, the last one I want to discuss here is the annual report, because our last reading for Lesson 6 was actually a compilation of well-designed annual reports. Annual reports provide an annual summary about activities, profits earned, or other key elements of an organization or a company. The audience of an annual report varies. For instance, a nonprofit organization might shape its annual report around documenting and illustrating the community-based events it's engaged in. Another nonprofit might shape its annual report towards its supporters and funders, helping to show them how their donations were put to use. A company might shape its annual report around innovations the company engaged in and the expected financial gain anticipated due to those innovations. Annual reports, as you can expect given this brief list of potential audiences, vary widely in approach. Some annual reports are written as stories about the organization. Other annual reports are written around a set of key visuals, like a set of bar charts representing financial assets. Annual reports can include tables, graphs, charts, diagrams presenting data. They often include photographs, especially if the focus is on telling stories about the organization or company. I want to share a particularly interesting example of an annual report, one that's incredibly visually rich and dense, and that's the Michigan State University 2013 annual report. I want to briefly take you into this particular document and this particular report. This is the President's Report, the annual report of Michigan State University for 2013, and I mentioned it's both looking backward and reflecting and highlighting 2013's activities and events, but it's also looking forward. I think it's an interesting example of document design and media presentation because of the way it's formatted and presented on the screen. It's really meant to be an immersive experience, explored, clicked through, watched, and more. There are videos embedded throughout the report. There are images included throughout the report, both aesthetic and conceptual and navigational. You can imagine in a more typical print-based report what this area might look like. This is the story of the new Broad Art Museum on campus. In a print-based document, it might include primarily text, paragraphs, maybe some images, but instead, because of the dynamic, interactive nature of this digital report, we can actually watch a time-lapse video of the museum being built. We can watch and explore an interview with the director of the museum. We can visually walk through the museum itself, and more. Again, links to the example reports included here are available in Lesson 6 on NYU classes, and I would encourage you guys to take a look at them, analyze their complexity, their level of formality, look at the moves being made, both textually and, more importantly for this class, visually across the reports. What this video clearly didn't address is the how of these reports. That is, what software is required to produce these sorts of reports. That's what we're going to address in our next video.